NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, and I am here with National Weather Service meteorologist Jim Cantore.
Weather Channel meteorologist.
Weather Channel.
I would love to work for the Weather Service. I love the National Weather Service. Some of my best buddies are Weather Service. But you know what's interesting?
Weather Channel.
Oh, you bring that up. By the way, is it B-O or B-A-U-X? We're in Louisiana. All right, so so the deal is we were, in the early days of the Weather Channel, we were often the voice of the Weather Service.
Right.
Okay, and there we would use all of their products in the sense to just display them, because they really had no outreach. There was no internet. There was no way to get what their message was out. So we were the voice for the Weather Service, if you will, back in the 80s and early 90s. Then, here comes the internet, here comes social media, here comes, our own computer models, our own high-resolution models and things like that. So we went out our own a little bit, but still, anything that comes from the Storm Prediction Center, from the National Hurricane Center, as is the case with this, that we're the voice of those entities.
Right.
So, they have their voice that goes out over social. We just replicate that on.
Right. And
they take the lead in it.
I do want to ask you about some of the models coming up, because this year is unique in that we have, for the first time, been able to use the potential tropical storm warnings. But
do you know what? Have you asked people about that? I'm wondering if it confuses more than
I was going to ask you if you thought whether it confuses or helps.
Well, sometimes anything new is difficult at first to get used to. But
right.
Essentially, the short of it is, there's a very high confidence we're going to get a named system.
Right.
All right. And until that happens, or until a couple of the missing pieces aren't there, what that does is allow the Hurricane Center to throw all the other products out there to get people ready. So the cone, the warnings, the products that come from NHC when you have a named storm,
right.
They're all going to be there. It just doesn't have a name yet.
Right.
So instead of having those products last minute, when it finally meets the meteorological criteria, you can put them out ahead of time.
Right, and to be clear, this is the news that has been coming out lately. We've been talking about potential tropical storm,
right.
Cindy, going to be,
but we'd be Cindy, correct?
But we are not actually in a tropical storm. A tropical storm hasn't formed, because for the first time, the National Hurricane Center has the ability to warn us about when conditions are favorable for a tropical storm to form within 24 or 48 hours, and
well, they're highly favorable. Like I said, we're missing a couple of meteorological pieces to the puzzle, and until we get those two, we can't name it. And it'll probably be a subtropical storm, by the way, but that's a whole different discussion. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be the same impacts. So until those two pieces come together meteorologically, you won't have a name.
Gotcha.
But all the other parameters, the tropical storm wind potential, the rainfall potential, the storm surge potential, and the cone, they can actually do. So you'll see those products, and you'll see them on the Weather Channel, you'll see them on the website from the Hurricane Center. If the plane goes out there right now, that it's out there roaming around, and it finds enough evidence to say, hey, this meets subtropical storm criteria or tropical storm criteria, it'll get a name. It'll get the name city.
The hurricane times.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, the name kind of gives it a little extra carte blanche. You know what I mean? I think it makes people pay more attention to it.
Aside from the graphics and the data and everything, what's your take? What are we looking at?
Rainfall.
We're looking at rainfall.
It's simply a rainfall event. The big question is, with our forecast of 5 to 8 inches of rain, does that all occur in a 4-hour period, or does it happen over a 24-hour period? Gradually. Maybe a quick inch an hour, then it stops, then another half inch comes in, and it stops for 3 hours. That's manageable here. We know that the pumps and the gates and the canals can all manage that water, especially since we're not getting a strong enough wind or storm surge component that's keeping the water in. So that's the other thing too. Not only are we in a bowl, we have to pump the water out, but if you can't get the water out, where are you pumping it to?
Right.
You're essentially pumping it back into yourself. So it's kind of a delicate game that the Army Corps has to play here. And really that's why I think this whole pump system, it's not a panacea, but it's really an incredibly brilliant invention. It's kind of like the Hoover Dam of today.
Right. So we're looking at rain.
Yep.
We've heard between 4 and 8 inches.
Correct.
Possibly as many as 10 in some places.
It's absolutely possible. Right?
Maybe not so much wind damage.
I don't think it's a wind issue. I mean, if we get thunderstorms, Some of these outer bands, if they produce an isolated tornado, absolutely will have some damage. But if not, generally the overall number one threat is the heavy rainfall. How quick does it fall? Is it going to be in a short period of time? Can the pumps here in the city handle it? And you know, this is one of those things where it's beyond the limits of even our high resolution models. We can kind of give you a range of time, like this afternoon through tonight. I think that's the meat of the event for here. But in terms of exactly which hour, we have to watch and wait and see how that happens.
Gotcha.
It plays out.
And so this system has been forming for a little while, and you've been watching it,
Yep.
and it's kind of stayed put pretty good for a little while, and now it's starting to strengthen, I guess, or what do we see?
I think this is the
doing?
first time I've ever seen a 15-day signal on a global computer model come true. 15 days ago, the computer models had this, and typically with the GFS, which the American model is, that is an error. We'd never believe that. Sometimes you see signals in the medium range, which I call 10 to 15 days, that say, well, this could actually happen, regardless of whatever the model is outputting. And those were there toward day 10. And so, especially once the European model jumped on the game, it was like, oh, you know what, we really got to watch this. But we've had so much time to watch this. Sometimes I think it's almost too much time, because we're so used to getting information like last minute, and our highest confidence is obviously right up to the moment of the forecast. So you start going out 7, 10 days on something, that's pretty. Right. And the problem is you can say it's going to happen, but you don't really know any specifics. Is it going to be a rain producer? Is it actually going to be a full-blown tropical storm? Is it going to be a hurricane? So it isn't really until the time within 48, 60 hours of the event that we can really fine-tune the specifics.
Right.
And now we're at that stage.
Gotcha. So you're thinking subtropical storm.
Right, which essentially, you know, so Brett has this tropical storm Brett, which is the one that went through Trinidad and Tobago in the Windward Islands, has a really tight wind field.
Right.
That's a purely tropical system. That's where we find the strongest winds in the tropical system around the center. This wind field with the potential cyclone number 3 is spread out wider. So I think if it gets named, it'll be subtropical storm Cindy.
Gotcha. Okay.
But all that is meteorological jargon.
Right.
Whether it's
What's
tropical storm Cindy or subtropical storm Cindy, it's still almost the same thing.
Gotcha.
In terms of New Orleans impacts, and that is rainfall.
Rainfall. And so in terms of the course of this thing, we're starting to see on some of the models that it is going a little bit towards the northwest.
West. Right.
What's causing
so
that?
Yeah, so that doesn't help us here.
Okay.
Because the rain is juxtaposed off to the east of the center. So even if the center travels west, the steering takes the moisture into New Orleans.
Okay.
And along that, Mobile, Pensacola, all these areas are in play with this.
Right. I've seen you on your Twitter and some of your news feeds. You say that the wind and the rain is loaded on the east side.
Right.
And I mean, what is that? Just something?
It's
that
the upper level winds. There's an upper low. This is why it's subtropical.
Yeah.
Sitting in the western Gulf, and it's kind of shoving all of that. It kind of tilts the whole system off to the right. So it's dry on the west side, windy, but dry, and all the weather, if you will, is on the east side.
Right. So this thing is veering towards the northwest. Gonna miss us with the eye, but we're gonna still catch all the rain.
Right.
Your
And
estimation.
more than likely, I think there's a good argument that there'll be more rain here than there will be with the center, if and when it moves onshore, potentially in the northwestern Gulf in a couple of days.
Gotcha. All right. Well,
that was a fine young discussion, young man. That was a fine discussion.
And I apologize for totally goofing the
Oh no,
National
dude, it's all right.
Weather,
It's all right. Listen,
Weather Channel, because you have
I'm,
been at the Weather
here's the
Channel
deal.
forever.
Whether it's local media, whether it's national media, weather media, whether it's National Weather Service or emergency management, we're all on the same team. Right. Yeah. So that's the takeaway.
We need your guys' help to report.
Anytime, my friend.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Beau Evans with Times-Picayune, NOLA.com, Times-Picayune. This is Jim Cantore with the Weather Channel. Thank you.